The wooden wagon groaned under the weight of 6 people, its iron-rimmed wheels hammering a relentless rhythm against the uneven cobblestones. Dona gripped the side rail, her knuckles white as the vehicle lurched toward the harbor. Beside her, Tina, Fern, Luna, Kage, and Vamp sat in silence, the air inside the wagon thick with the scent of damp wood and anticipation. The harbor appeared suddenly, a jagged scar against the coastline where the sea met the land. They climbed out, the sudden stillness of the ground beneath their boots feeling strange after the constant vibration of the journey. They moved as one toward the dock, where the ship waited, its mast swaying against a darkening sky. Dona stepped onto the deck first, signaling the others to follow. Lines were cast off, and the heavy rope slapped against the wood. A stiff, cold breeze caught the sails, snapping them taut with a sound like a gunshot. The vessel groaned, pivoted, and began to cut through the black water. Behind them, the harbor lights dimmed into pinpricks of yellow. Ahead, the horizon swallowed the light, promising only the jagged, dark cliffs of the pirate kingdom. They stood at the bow, watching the mist gather. The tavern door swung inward, releasing a wave of thick, acrid smoke and the sharp sting of salt air. The crew stepped into the dim interior, where the low hum of voices died out as they crossed the threshold. In the far corner, Neva sat alone, a glass of butterscotch glowing amber against the scarred wood of the table. She caught their eyes and beckoned them closer with a sharp, impatient gesture. They gathered around, the floorboards creaking. Neva did not waste time with pleasantries. She slid a weathered map across the table, her expression hardening into a mask of urgency. "The Oni have captured the Leviathan Queen," she whispered. "She is held in a chamber beneath a fog-shrouded island. Only the gemstone guarded by a skeletal titan can break her chains." Kage traced the route on the map, his jaw set. They stood up in unison, the decision made before a single word was spoken. The target was set. The ship cut through the final layer of mist, the sails slack and heavy with moisture. Ahead, the island rose from the sea like a jagged tooth, its peaks lost in a swirling gray shroud. As they drew closer, the temperature plummeted. The salt spray on the deck turned to fine, stinging ice. Dona gripped the wheel, her breath blooming in the air as a white cloud. The vessel slowed, the hull scraping against the hidden shoals. They lowered the small boat and rowed toward the shore, the oars dipping into water that felt thick and sluggish. They stepped onto the black sand, the grains crunching under their boots with a sound like grinding glass. The silence here was absolute, pressing against their eardrums. Fern looked toward the tree line, his hand hovering near his side. They stood in a tight circle, eyes scanning the gray wall of mist, waiting for the inevitable movement that would break the stillness. The fog tore open. A towering skeleton lunged forward, its eye sockets erupting with intense blue fire. It swung a massive, rusted blade that carved a trench through the black sand. Kage lunged, his own steel ringing against the titan's bone blade. Sparks showered the beach. Luna and Tina sprinted to the left and right, their rapid movements drawing the creature's focus. The titan roared, a sound like grinding stone, and pivoted to crush them. That split second of overextension was the opening. Dona sprinted beneath the creature's guard, ignoring the heat radiating from its ribcage. She reached into the hollow of its chest, her fingers closing around the cold, pulsing gemstone. The titan shrieked, its blue fire flickering as it tried to swat her away. Dona rolled into the sand, the stone glowing brilliantly in her palm. The creature stumbled, its movements losing their unnatural speed as the light in its eyes began to dim. Kage kicked the titan's leg, sending the massive frame crashing into the surf. They did not wait for it to rise. With the prize secured, they turned and sprinted toward the prison chamber. They reached the stone slab blocking the chamber entrance, the surface etched with ancient, pulsing runes. Dona pressed the glowing gemstone into the central depression. Nothing happened. The light flickered, threatening to die out. Kage grabbed her wrist, pressing his weight against hers, while Tina and Luna placed their hands over the stone to channel their own strength. The ground beneath them began to vibrate, a low, grinding hum. rose in pitch until it became a piercing whine. Suddenly, the stone lock shattered into dust. The massive wall groaned, cracks spiderwebbing across its face before the entire structure buckled inward. Stone blocks tumbled into the dark. As the dust settled, a soft, rhythmic luminescence spilled out from the chamber. There, suspended in the center of the room, the Leviathan Queen drifted. Her scales caught the light of the gemstone, shimmering with the iridescent intensity of moonlight on deep water. She opened her eyes. The crew stood frozen, the weight of their victory finally settling in. The oppressive silence was replaced by the sound of her slow, powerful movement. The Leviathan Queen followed them to the deck, her presence casting a long shadow over the wooden planks. There was no time for celebration. Vamp stood at the prow, his palms raised toward the sky as he began a rapid, rhythmic chant. The air around the ship grew heavy, vibrating with a low-frequency hum that rattled the masts. Suddenly, a translucent, shimmering barrier rippled into existence, sealing the vessel inside a sphere of pressurized force. The ship groaned as it tilted forward, sliding off the surface of the water and into the dark expanse below. The transition was violent. The light of the sun vanished, replaced by the suffocating gloom of the deep. As they sank, the ocean floor revealed itself a sprawling graveyard of stone. The Oni had not just conquered this place. They had dismantled it. The crew watched through the shimmering wall of the bubble. The silence of the deep sea was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic thrum of the bubble. They were entering the heart of the enemy's occupation. The ruins were not empty. From the shadows of a collapsed archway, a dozen silhouettes detached themselves from the silt. The Oni had arrived. They moved with unnatural speed through the water, their blades carving long, glowing trails in the darkness. Before the crew could react, the first wave slammed into the shimmering bubble. The barrier shuddered, a ripple of white light spreading across its surface like a spider web of cracks. Dona gripped the railing, her knuckles white, as the ship lurched violently to the left. Outside, more Oni emerged from the gloom, a swarm of jagged shapes closing in. They hammered against the force field, their strikes vibrating through the deck and into the marrow of the crew's bones. Kage drew his blade, but there was nowhere to strike. The enemy was everywhere, a suffocating ring of steel and malice. Tina and Luna scrambled to the center of the deck, trying to reinforce the barrier, but the energy was thinning. The ship groaned, the wood protesting under the relentless pressure of the currents and the siege. Every time an Oni spear struck the bubble, the light dimmed further. They were being pushed down toward the ocean floor, trapped in a shrinking cage of their own making. The Oni roared, a sound that bypassed the water and echoed directly in the crew's minds. The barrier gave way with a sound like shattering glass. Water rushed in, cold and heavy, but Vamp did not retreat. He turned toward Fern, his hand outstretched, his voice cutting through the chaos of the encroaching Oni. "Now!" he shouted. Fern lunged toward the Leviathan Queen. They met in the center of the deck, and the world vanished in a blinding, white-hot flash. The light was so intense it bleached the dark currents into a searing void. The Oni recoiled, their blades dropping as the energy pulse expanded, pushing the water back with the force of a tidal wave. Where the two figures had stood, a new form coalesced. Scales of iridescent light spiraled outward, growing, shifting, and hardening into a massive serpentine frame. Levern had arrived. The creature unfurled, its length dwarfing the ship and the surrounding ruins alike. It opened its maw and let out a roar. The seabed buckled. Levern swept its tail in a wide, crushing arc, pulverizing the remaining enemy formations. The tide had turned. The massive roar faded into a low, rhythmic hum that pulsed through the water. Levern hovered above the seabed, its scales casting a soft, bioluminescent glow that pushed back the suffocating dark. The Oni were gone, leaving only scattered debris and swirling silt in their wake. Silence reclaimed the deep. For a long moment, the only motion was the gentle sway of the giant creature's tail. Then, a movement caught the eye near the base of a shattered archway. A hand reached out from behind a fallen pillar, followed by a face, then another. One by one, the people of the underwater kingdom crawled from their hiding places. They moved slowly, their eyes wide as they looked up at the colossal hybrid entity hovering above. The fear that had defined their existence for so long began to dissolve. Levern descended, its massive form settling near the central plaza. As it moved, the light from its scales touched the ruined structures, and the stone seemed to knit itself back together. Cracks sealed. Collapsed walls groaned as they rose upright. The city, once a graveyard of ambition, began to breathe again. The people gathered in the open, their voices rising in a soft, melodic hum. The battle was over. The long siege had ended. In the shimmering light of their savior, the kingdom began, the slow, steady work of healing, while the crew watched from the deck of their ship, drifting in the quiet currents of a world reborn.